Oh, you're good.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. All right, so Wendy, I'm going to start on this side really quick. I'm Cynthia Rodriguez. Good evening. I'm the chair of Community Board 11. Today is Tuesday, April 15th. The time now is 6:07 p.m. We have several members online due to travel issues. And so Wendy, we have Nate and Elise here. So I'll turn it over to you, Wendy.
Evening, how are you? This is Wendy Hewlett Betts. I'm chair of land use. Sorry I couldn't be with you guys today, but welcome. Our first, I guess we can get right into the presentations because it is going to be somewhat of a lengthy meeting. So Cynthia, I don't have the agenda in front of me. Who's our first presenter?
So I have
Is it the
DCP.
Gun Hill Road?
No,
These.
DCP first.
Okay, Nate. Okay, so Nate, floor is yours.
All right. Thank you. So let me just try to figure out how to share the presentation.
Go to the share. And then we'll curl it.
Good. And so you can also see full screen.
It's good.
Sure.
Can everyone see?
I can make it
Yes.
full screen here because it's cutting off on the edges.
Yeah. Is it that little square with the up and down arrows? Kind of in the middle there?
Oh yeah.
You know, at least one sentence.
Yeah, that works better. You can still see online, right?
Yeah, you guys can see? Wendy? I think she nodded yes.
I can see it.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you. Yeah, my name is Nate Heffron. I'm a senior borough planner in the Bronx office at the Department of City Planning. And as of this year, I'm now your official Community Board 11 liaison for DCP. Happy to be here and happy to officially be your liaison. I think some of you might remember me. I joined a couple of the last land use committee meetings, also presented this when it was in its public review to you all last year. Really appreciated the dialogue that we had on this pretty important text amendment, and it really there's a lot of updates to it. So I'll take you through a presentation, but also just I wanted to be here in person to kind of reintroduce myself to you all as your new liaison, and just like a little bit about myself. I've been with DCP for about the past 2.5 years now, and before that, I was actually with the Parks Department, a few years in their planning office, and also a few years in the Bronx Borough Commissioner's office. So I've been around. It's actually the Parks Department office isn't too far from here, so I'm pretty familiar with sort of like the Morris Park, Pelham Parkway area. So yeah, excited to be your new liaison. And also to share some of these really important updates that have happened to this text amendment. There's a lot in this presentation. It's pretty lengthy, but I'll try to go as quickly as possible through it because some of it is sort of a refresher of like the overall proposal, but I'll go by each of the big changes and then sort of talk about how they change throughout the public review process and when the text amendment came to the city council. So just the refresher, the city housing opportunity was the third of three citywide zoning text amendments. Of course, the first one was city for carbon neutrality, tried to get zoning regulations out of the way of our our climate goals, trying to achieve local law 97 in the city. The second was City for Economic Opportunity, which tried to reduce the barriers for small businesses and growing industries in the city. And then lastly, we had the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity, which tried to increase our opportunities to introduce like more housing, bring us to housing crisis in the city. So we believe it's the most pro-housing zoning plan in the history of New York City. Even with the modifications, we still expect over 80,000 new homes to be built over the next 15 years across the entire city. In addition, when the city council was able to negotiate a deal with to allow for $5 billion for funding for infrastructure and other housing improvements, a lot of things that came from the public review, a lot of concerns that zoning couldn't really address. There's some money that's been invested in that, and also it's responded. A lot of the modifications responded to the feedback that we got. When we presented this last year to all community boards across the city, there were a lot of really good. There was a lot of really good feedback that we received, and hopefully was addressed in the modifications. Which I'm curious to hear if you think it really addressed some of your concerns. So again, just refresher, like we're in a very acute housing crisis, and there's a major shortage in the city, very low vacancy rates, very high percentage of New Yorkers are rent burdened, and also very high number of homeless New Yorkers, many people staying in shelters, and also many children staying in shelters. We also haven't been building a lot of housing. Our housing production has slowed to a trickle. And in the bottom right, there's a graph that compares New York City with other major cities across the country. And we're just not keeping pace. Other cities, are producing more housing units per capita compared to us. So that's also contributing, not the only cause, but contributing to this issue. We do see a lot of construction already in New York, but it's really concentrated in a few neighborhoods, like in the South Bronx and Western Queens, downtown Brooklyn, the waterfront, Hudson Yards type area. It's really concentrated in just a few community districts and virtually no housing production everywhere else. And of course, this has very real consequences for New Yorkers in terms of like high rents, displacement, homelessness, poor housing quality. Landlord harassment, it contributes to a whole lot of issues that many of us are facing when it comes to housing in the city. And of course, many people are paying much larger shares of their income on rent. So it's an issue all around for us, and it's really taking a toll on the economy as well. So that's why we wanted to take a citywide approach with this proposal and make some proposals for that would affect all the city and allow for housing growth everywhere. It's again just a summary of the biggest proposals that were part of this text amendment. Again, they were divided into low density categories, which we were talking about our lower density residential areas and R1 to R5 districts, what we would call, and then our medium to high density proposals and R6 to R10 districts, and then citywide proposals as well that would apply everywhere. So first we'll talk about the low density proposals. One of the big goals of this one was to sort of like re-legalize what's called missing middle housing that's really targeted for middle income households. That's not like heavily subsidized, lower income housing, and not, luxury catering housing as well. So many of the buildings that you would see like in these images would not be allowed to be built with the zoning as it was. So that's one of the things that the proposal was trying to target. So the first one of these was what we were calling transit-oriented development, which would allow for small modest apartment buildings in these lower density areas that were near mass transit. And they had to meet certain criteria. So of course they'd have to be, a certain distance away from a transit stop. The lot size would have to be at least 5,000 square feet, and they had to be either on the short end of a block or on a wide street. So when looking at Community District 11, this is sort of like the area where they could be eligible, not everywhere, but this would just be a sample of like where transit-oriented development, closer to like the 5 train or the 2 train, for example. And when this got to the city council, some modifications happened to this particular proposal. So some of the big ones were that the single family districts are R1 and R2 districts. were excluded from this particular proposal, sort of to keep apartment buildings separate from single family uses. And it also reduced the distance between for commuter rail station from half a mile to a quarter mile to be eligible for this particular type of housing. So these are sort of like just how like the changes are. And as I'm going along through this too, some of the changes can be very technical, very wonky, and I appreciate if you bear with me. Please feel free to, ask questions about it. But but I also do want to kind of show you the technical side of it too, because it was such a huge proposal, and like why was it so big? Is that it went into some of these very small technical changes in terms of like bulks and floor area ratios and things of that nature. So again, if it's too much, feel free to stop me if you want to go into a discussion on the super technical stuff. I'm happy to do that as well. The next proposal is on town center zoning. So it's sort of a similar sort of type of housing like you'd see here right on Morris Park Ave, where you have 2 to 3 stories of residential over a commercial district in these low density districts as well. So again, it's sort of like out would apply both in and out of the transit zone as well. And where would this apply in the Community Board 11, again, like along Morris Park Ave and sort of like it's Bridge Road, parts of like Gun Hill. These are sort of areas where it's like, again, these are, for new development. It's not, anything that's like changing what's currently there. So for anything new that would apply, this would apply for like any new development, say like along, these borders. Yeah, and it's trying to be responsive to like types of housing that we already see in these areas that are, small and modest. Like they're not trying to put, 12, 20, 30, 40 story towers right next to, single and multifamily homes. It's just trying to, re-legalize these types of buildings that we already see in these neighborhoods. But this, couldn't be built before. So again, there's some changes that was made to this proposal. In particular, like it excludes some areas where a commercial district is only like 1 block or less. So it's because that's not really a commercial corridor. So those places wouldn't be eligible for this town center zoning. And also if those blocks, include only like 1 or 2 family homes and no other commercial. So again, those aren't necessarily existing commercial corridors too. It also modified like how the rules of like how community facilities can apply to these districts, and also created an incentive for any larger development that would happen using this type of approach to give it an affordable incentive. And floor area, they opt into providing at least 20% of their units as affordable at 80% EMI, because the proposal before it didn't have any affordable incentive, but the city council modified it to include this incentive in some instances. And this is also a proposal that really sought to, even the changes to it sought to bring more affordable income, affordable sort of like missing middle housing to these two low density districts. And then there was also accessory dwelling units. I remember there was a lot of discussion about these when we were in public review. So this of course includes like backyard apartments, attic conversions, basement conversions, garage conversions. There were some pretty substantial changes to this proposal as well. One thing that we heard a lot was that there were more flood prone areas where they would have been allowed, which was flagged a lot in the public review process. So it was previously just coastal risk flood areas that were excluded from allowing basement and backyard ADUs, but the proposal modified it to include additional flood risk areas as well as the inland flood areas. So DEP provided that sort of like inland flood risk area so that backyard and basement ADUs wouldn't be allowed there.
Where would those area be? What areas?
Yes, so that, this zooming in on, CB11, these would be, the areas, and again, this is, these were provided by DEP
Okay,
for the inland coastal flood areas, because
okay.
CB11 doesn't have any,
Mhm.
coastal line, so, um, yeah, and so there were some also additional, kind of regulations that were put in place from the city council as well, so, the homeowner is required to live on the same zoning lot when at the initial occupancy of an ADU. Um, Again, they changed the flood maps to, increase the areas that are more risky for the backyard and basement ADUs. Certain districts are also excluded from it, such as like one family districts and historic districts. And also ADUs are limited to 1 story unless they're, say, like being built on top of a garage, for example.
Okay.
So Nate, within the discussions, right? And I know this is probably too early, but any talks about possible funding to help homeowners with the additional adding this, like grant money or something that would be able to help them with creating something
To
on their
incent-
property?
Right, I think, yeah, that's a good question, and I think that may have been addressed in that $5 billion package because there's some funding set aside for like physical infrastructure, and then there's also funding for like programmatic things. It's like, I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but there's there was like a lot of demand for like home ownership opportunities. That was like really a comment that we heard a lot, but it's something that of course we can't do with zoning necessarily. So but there's like program some money set aside for programs. I'm not sure if there's explicitly any money for expanding like because HPD had a pilot program with ADUs. It's kind of talked about on this next slide, which was very popular, but so perhaps that's something, that's part of that package or something that we can also, see in the future to, fund some of these, conversions. And of course, there's also, state laws that also have to change to help allow this, but it's, but this is just to allow it in the zoning too, so. And then lastly, for the low density proposal, there was, what we call district fixes, something to help homeowners with, if they wanted to like, change or modify the property or to allow for, say like a 2-family district to actually allow a 2-family home. As like houses that you would see like in this picture, wouldn't be allowed because they're just, too bulky. So we propose modifying just, the yard and bulk requirements for some of these districts, to, help accommodate, homeowners to be able to either build, actual 2-family homes or to be able to, modify their home, because if you have a large home like that, you might not be able to, get funding to say like, do improvements on your home because you're not compliant with the zoning. So we wanted to provide some of that relief, but there were some changes to it. Again, they were very technical just in terms of kind of like walking back the lot width and area requirements to is address like potential quality of life concerns that might come up, but there's still, some relief provided. Again, it gets like, very technical and it depends based on, your zoning district, but there was still some, modifications there that could you know uh,
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow.
Great, and then I'll move on to the medium and high density proposals. So for this, we were proposing a new affordable housing program called Universal Affordability Preference, or UAP. So this would extend an existing framework, which we already have for an affordable housing incentive, but extend it to all of our high density districts. Which essentially gives you 20% extra floor area if that floor area is committed to permanently affordable housing at an average of 60% AMI. Which, if this program had been in place for the last 10 years, we could have, had perhaps an additional 20,000 income restricted homes built in the city. So it'll replace this old framework that we had called voluntary inclusionary housing, because it's a voluntary program. A new building can opt into this if they choose to get that extra floor area. But again, there was also some changes that happened at the city council level. Before we get to that, this is where the districts where it would apply in CB11. So again, it's more around the sort of like White Plains Road area, Bronx Park East, Pelham Parkway areas. And this proposal is some modification that happened to this one, where that for say like very large new developments, which probably is unlikely to happen in CB11, but it would provide like an additional deeper affordability incentive or requirement for it, where 20% of that additional floor area, your UAP floor area is above 10,000 square feet, that it would require at least some of those to be at a lower affordability, a lower income AMI at 40%, as opposed to just the typical one that was proposed, the 60 average of 60%. So just a slight change that for larger developments to ensure even more deeper affordability in the larger developments, along with some other technical changes for some very specific districts and special districts throughout the city. And this is a slide that I wanted to also kind of show that it gets into like the technical weeds of the proposal, but it's something that I think it really illustrates like how we can help just like build like better housing and maybe like that. A lot of the new buildings that you see today are like the top one, which is sort of called like a bar building, where on the inside you'd have like one long corridor and then apartments on each side of that building. And it doesn't really allow for like much efficiency. You don't get a cross breeze in those types of buildings. I remember I used to live in one, and you'd have to have the air conditioner on even when it's only like 75 degrees outside, because you don't get that cross ventilation. But if you just change the requirements from having a 30-foot rear yard to a 20-foot rear yard, and then changing the maximum lot coverage from 70 to 80%, that gives an architect a whole lot more flexibility to bring back, say, like the bottom picture, which is an older building design that we've seen and has worked well before, that allows for each apartment building, same size building, but can allow for like a cross breeze in each of those apartments. So again, it gives more flexibility to provide not just more housing in the city, but better housing, but just by tweaking some of the district rules, by a few feet each direction. So then we'll get into the citywide proposals. How am I on time? You're on time?
Yeah.
Okay. So we heard a lot about our parking proposal to remove parking mandates citywide, and understand that wasn't very popular in many areas. I get that too. I drove here today. I understand. So, but this proposal, when it got to the city council, city council and their land use staff really worked to modify this one significantly and created a tiered approach, which essentially kept the elimination of parking mandates for just most of Manhattan and some of the closer to Manhattan neighborhoods in Brooklyn and Queens, as you can see on the map. And then a second zone where that's closer to mass transit, but still keeps some parking requirements, but they're lower than what they used to be. And then zone 3, which would be places that are beyond transit, don't have really great transit access, are still more car dependent, and they kept the old parking requirements in its old zoning regulation. So it was like here in 411, mostly zone 2. So again, like any new development would still have to provide some parking, but there's parts of 411 too that still keep the old regulations, more like Pelham Gardens and Morris Park, sort of south of Morris Park Ave. And then the next proposal was to help facilitate conversions. And this one actually wasn't substantively changed at the city council. This is just a proposal just to remind you what was in the package to help with the conversion of underused buildings or unused buildings like offices, churches, schools, things like that, to help to make more buildings like that eligible to be converted to housing when possible. So there were only certain parts of the city where that would be possible. So now it was expanded citywide. So if there's any types of these, buildings, here in 411 that, they would be now eligible. It's moving the eligibility date from 1961 or 1977 up to 1991. So that could possibly unlock some new opportunities there. But again, it wasn't substantially changed at the city council level. And then there's the next proposal is about contextual infill or campus development. So we tend to think of campuses like NYCHA campuses that have large open spaces that that they've in recent years have started to introduce like some more housing to. But there's also other types of campuses like churches that have large open spaces that are not necessarily being used, or like private developments that are campuses like a Parkchester or Co-op City. So we added some rules to allow for this to happen, and again they were changed at the city council, and also the city planning commission made a pretty big change to this proposal and excluded NYCHA campuses from this because NYCHA has their own process for doing campus infill. They do like their own outreach with tenants associations and things like that. So decided to keep let them continue their process. But this would then apply to other types of campuses around the city. But as this was changed, some of the big changes on it were to restrict the height of any new buildings on these campuses so that they are truly match the whatever's currently existing on that campus, so that you're not seeing like I just want to take like Parkchester for an example. I mean, I say this would happen, but there's already a certain like height to Parkchester buildings, but if you like were to plop like a 50-story building right in the middle, nothing like that. It would have to conform to the rest of the development essentially. And then there were also some additional protections for like recreational open spaces on these campuses. So, if they had like a playground or something that was being used, that they would have to like replace it, for example. So some extra guidelines there for this proposal. And then there was a proposal to allow for small shared apartments to sort of like address the demand for more studios and one bedrooms for many people that want to live by themselves, but would rather not have a roommate situation and take up, a larger apartment by doing that. And the way that we were proposing that was to eliminate what was called the dwelling unit factor. And again, this is getting really into the technical weeds on it, but it's essentially a number that says that tells you what the average square footage of apartments should be in a new building. So the higher that number is, the larger the apartments have to be within the building. So if you have like a high number, you probably would be required to put more, 2, 3, 4 bedroom apartments. If the lower the number, you can do like more studios, 1s and 2s. So we were proposing eliminating the dwelling unit factor in many parts of the city and then reducing it to 500 square feet elsewhere. But when the city council modified this to maintain the current dwelling unit factor for anything that's built, so that existing buildings wouldn't just gut themselves and just replace their entire interior with all studios, and raise that dwelling unit factor up to 680 and everywhere but in the places that you see on the map here. So don't have a zoomed in map for this one, but most of CV11 would still have like that higher 680 dwelling unit. And then this was one that we heard a lot of feedback on. There's still a great demand for like family size units. This is trying to strike that balance by accommodating the studio and one bedroom demand in the city, but also that very high, larger family sized unit demand as well.
Question. Shared apartments, can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so
Is that like a dorm?
yeah, it's sort of like a new trend that we've been seeing. That's very much it is. It's
No,
it
It reminded me of my dorm. It's like you have your room and then you got your shared bathroom or kitchen.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is. It's they are essentially like college dorms, but not non-college students are living in them. We've been seeing some of them come up, and it's a different way of, providing, a type of housing that's, more affordable and accessible for people. So that's also one thing that we wanted to.
It's gonna start to look like London. That's the way they live in Europe.
I'm sure, yeah. That makes me, yeah,
What he said, what she said?
like London. It's like London.
In London, a lot of it is very expensive to live. So either you find a girlfriend or boyfriend so that you can have your 1 bedroom apartment alone, or you're living in shared housing. That's
That,
very prevalent.
that is the inner city of London?
I don't know. I don't know. So now you're getting into like geographic. When I went to London, I stayed in Notting Hill in an apartment, but I also visited other neighborhoods where other friends lived. I don't know exactly where I was, but they lived in kind of like rooms. They lived in rooms and that had like their own door, a lock, and all of that. But I don't remember if the bathroom was in the room. Perhaps maybe. But it was very small. It wasn't like a full living room, a kitchen, this and a that. It was literally a room. And you have your like you can enter your room with a like a code or a lock, but there were other people living in that building, and it wasn't a house. It was actually a building created for people to occupy these apartments, but they were much smaller and obviously more affordable for the people to live. I don't know what
So
neighborhood I was
you
in.
could recall which part of London was that?
In 2011, no, I don't. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, you can move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what the goal of this too, is to try to increase like the opportunity for more adults to like, beat that, because it's, it is a more affordable way to live. Some people do like that. But again, it's about increasing opportunities for all types of housing. And lastly, this wasn't necessarily a modification of the city council, but after the state removed our floor area ratio cap, we also created 3 new zoning districts. This is not really relevant for us because we don't even have an R10 district in the Bronx. We only have one small R9, and that's over in the West Bronx by Yankee Stadium. So we created an R11, R11A, and an R12 district. So these are very high density districts. We don't have to worry about them in the Bronx, let alone PV11, not for a very long time, but just to say like this is an additional kind of like tool that like we've created to again allow for more housing, more like in Manhattan and downtown Brooklyn type of area, get to like respond to just the needs that we have here. And I don't think any of the I think they haven't been mapped through this, but I think through one of our Manhattan office proposals, just rezoned a part of Midtown, map the first ones of these districts in Midtown. So to wrap up, just a bit of our timeline. This has actually been in the works for quite a while, going back to 2018, really, when HPD began the Where We Live NYC Fair Housing Plan. I also believe they're planning on updating this soon, so you might hear something about that in the near future. But when that plan was released, it kind of set the groundwork for this housing opportunity text amendment and kind of pointed in the direction of some of these proposals already. And then that's when we began to do the work on this in 2022 and drafted it in 23, and then did our public review on it last spring, when I presented to you last. And following last spring, it went to the City Planning Commission, and they held a record long 15-hour public hearing with over 200 speakers. That was in July, and then it went to City Council for another hearing, and then they passed it in early December of last year with all of the modifications to the proposal that we just talked about today. So, and just to wrap up, this I think this is it really does a lot to address our fair housing issues in the city, increasing opportunities for low-income New Yorkers, also improving quality of housing and affordability for existing residents and just increasing the number of homes available and for those that require residence assistance. And again, to talk about what happened when this proposal got to the city council, it was a very common comment that we heard a lot from the public that we need to invest in infrastructure because even in some parts of the city, even a little bit of housing would overload things like sewers, schools, things of that nature. So a $5 billion investment was negotiated to accompany this. Don't think it's exhaustive, but at least it's a good down payment on it. And in the environmental review that was performed for this text amendment will also, in addition to this guide the city's capital program for years to come in the city. So that'll, go to like upgrading infrastructure and, building new schools and things of that nature. But it'll also address a lot of the other concerns, like I was saying before about there's a lot of demand for like home ownership and additional programs for like tenant protections, things of that nature, because those are things that, zoning can't necessarily fix. But something that was very, it was very strongly demanded, when we were going out to the public with this. So hopefully this does, again, not exhaustive, but it's a good down payment, a good start on addressing all of the other issues that we have with housing in New York. So, and again, it's hopefully this is moving us in the direction of, finally alleviating the housing crisis in New York by increasing choice and reducing costs, reducing displacement pressures, addressing the types of housing that all New Yorkers need in the various ways that we need housing, and also supporting transit-oriented development. So yeah, with that, any questions?
I have a question. This is Kajara speaking. Do we get to have this presentation?
It's on the agenda.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
It's on the agenda.
Yeah, it's linked,
On the housing agenda, if you click the link under adoption presentation under DCP, it should pop up, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Quick question on compliance. So I think a lot of us folks, we've kind of swallowed the pill, right? This is gonna happen. Go for it. But who's gonna watch for compliance, everything you've just mentioned? Who's gonna make sure everyone's doing it right according to the rules that were passed over time? Because I think our biggest gripe of saying yes to this was, well, if we don't rein it in, then who's gonna watch? Right? So I guess that's my question now, and I'll ask you again in the future, right? Because we have to make sure that this is being compliant.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, and again, I remember it coming up in last year too. But I don't have like an itemized breakdown of that $5 billion investment, but I believe some of it was allocated to the Department of Buildings for the enforcement component that you're talking about. It's like, how do we see this, especially with like the ADUs, right? That's going to be really dependent on enforcement, and making sure that they're safe and compliant. That money, I believe, I don't remember off the top of my head exactly how much, but I do recall that the DOP was allocating some funds for that enforcement element.
And the reason I think I bring that up, we have a lot of cases here in housing and land use in all of our subcommittees where if it's not HPD, we don't get a say in the vote, right? In the sense that we get a lot of new housing in the area, and if it's not financed by HPD, we don't get to see it. They kind of just pop up. We don't want that to happen in this case, right? And we don't know what folks are building. We may not get the transparency. So I guess that's our ask, is always to find out a way to see where things are happening where. So I guess you said you don't have the answer, but with time, someone will tell us.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna find you again. You were here last year.
Yeah. Well, I'm here now.
I know.
Also, but then also defer like HPD and DOP for them. Yeah, like specifically how they go about doing it, because we at DCP, we're not an enforcement agency, so but it is a good question and good concern.
Yeah.
I get, and just let me piggyback, Nate, off of what Rich is saying. You know, the devil is always in the details, right? So that's why the programmatic part is always the most important part, right? So just going back when we talked about the small units. So there are small units scattered in Manhattan, lower Manhattan, right? Where in the 30s, you had what was called rooming houses, where you had those apartments that didn't have a bathroom, but they, you know, had a small bedroom, closet, whatever, but you shared, or a small kitchen rather, but you shared the bathroom, and, you know, the bathroom was set up in the hallway. So I'm assuming that that's what they're trying to eliminate going forward. So you have a lot of those in brownstones, a lot of those units in mini tenements in like what is that, the Chinatown area, lower Manhattan area. We may have some here, you know. But again, I always go back to program. I always go back to, I see the zoning text, but then the administrative part, right? Who's going to make sure that this is done properly or the way it's supposed to be done? Like Rich said, you know, if you don't get city dollars, you don't have to come to us. So we're going to start to see a lot of buildings come up in the area because they don't have to come to us and they're getting big money from wherever they're getting it from. That's what's concerning.
You.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. Again, it's like since this is just the zoning piece of the puzzle, that you're right that there's the programmatic side as well, the enforcement side. There's the capital side, and yeah, this is just like the start of it, just for the zoning. So, and I think you raised a really great point. Now and back last year as well, and that's why I think that $5 billion was negotiated, to start to get at like some of these, additional concerns. And yeah, and also in terms of like going back to like those, older style, like, SRO type of buildings, like there's also the New York City Building Code still applies as well. So there's still requirements and minimums that need to be, met for any type of like new housing that's hopefully an improvement on what was the early part of last century.
Rich, I'm deferring to
No,
you.
no, I mean, yeah, I mean, Mike.
Do you want to call him? Yeah.
So I'm very happy that the city of Leicester has been very good to this effort. I did have a question regarding the parking zone map. My understanding is, at least for this area with zone 2, that the city council set the boundaries based on where existing transit is. And it seems that the city council didn't account for future transit access because we're getting the Metro North stations in, but some of that area was designated zone 3 with the highest parking requirements. So I'm wondering, once those stations open up in a couple of years, I'm assuming that parking zone map is not gonna automatically update if that needs to be revisited.
No, yeah, that is a good question. I saw the map to recognize that that's where the station is coming. There will be transit there. And at least I know for the that happened through the Bronx Metro North rezoning that zoning update was to reflect the city housing opportunity proposal. But that doesn't cover all of that area. Essentially, that's near the new where the new station is going to go. So I'll ask. I can look into that a bit more to see if it'll automatically take effect when the new station comes online, or if the map would have to be amended. But that's also a fortunate thing about our zoning resolution. It's a living document. It changes all the time. So when the new stations come on, and hopefully someday in the future we build even more new transit in the city, that the maps can be updated. They would expect them to be updated.
Thank you.
Anything else, Wendy, Rich?
Nothing. I think we're gonna show this around to the full board, so you may have more questions later, but for now, I think we're good.
Yeah, I think I asked Jeremy to make sure he sent the presentation around to all committee members, and I'm also asking that he sends it around to the full board and to have copies at the desk when we have full board.
I think when we have full board, let's take a couple minutes out to field any questions folks may have, just in case.
That's fine. Nate, I invite you to come back if you want to attend the full board.
We can zoom in.
Just so that you can do a mini recap. I think that'll be best, Rich, right? It takes
Yeah,
kind of,
that'd be great.
yeah, if Nate, if you can come back next week to full board, you know, just to give a little mini recap so that if any of the outside members have any questions, they can just ask, and we'll carve out time. Cynthia, Madam Chair, can we carve out some time? We can do it during me and Rich's time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can try. I mean,
Yeah, we're not gonna kidnap you and bring you.
yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, you can even do it virtual if you can.
Yeah.
In the event I can't make it, but please feel free to pass along any questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Sounds great. Thank you, Nate, and welcome to the family.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, Wendy, so Wendy and Rich, next on the agenda is the special permit application. Is that Elise?
Yeah.
Yes, is that 1920 Gun Hill Road? Is that the
Yeah.
address?
But it's AKA 2450 Alley
Yes.
Avenue, because when we filed it, we had to get a new house number.
Yes,
So
yes, I saw
both of
that.
them are real. But where is this? I'm gonna bring up.
Yeah, you can move it over to your side.
I'm gonna bring up. And I think this is the perfect transition from his presentation, because we're here because of City of Yes. So here we go. Because I know this is gonna surprise everyone, but in a few ways, it became, like most things became easier to build, few things became harder, and that's why we're here today. So, okay, so I'm gonna show, everybody can see this, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's perfect. So I'm gonna give you a little history. So before City of Yes, there was a special permit. You go to the Board of Standards and Appeals if you were in a low density commercial district, a C1 district. And if you were in a C.
Do you have a presentation up? Because we can't see it on this end.
Let's, sorry. Where, file?
See, but it was Google Chrome. I think.
It was on Chrome?
Maybe that one, yeah.
No, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was in the, I don't know, how did I open it?
Here.
Oh, it's in that.
Can you see that, Wendy?
Yeah.
I have to go to Edge.
Oh, okay.
See that? Mhm.
Oh, okay, there you
perfect.
go.
There?
Okay, see that?
Okay,
Yes.
that's okay.
Okay, that's what we're trying to build here. So I think that's good. I have pictures and stuff if you want to see the neighborhood after, but this is what we're trying to achieve. So back to the background. So before City of Yes, in a C1 district is all you would need for a drive-through special permit, because it was low commercial and they wanted to make sure that the drive-through didn't cause any traffic problems. So you had to go through the BSA. So there's this extra element to look to make sure that the drive-through isn't going to create any queuing or traffic problems. And the DOT just takes an extra heavy look at it. So after City of Yes, I guess because they're changing parking and all this elements of it, now C2 through C7 districts, all those districts, you need to get a drive-through special permit no matter what. And the findings of the special permit are that you have 10 or more spaces. I'd like you to see here that we went above and beyond because we have a nice site here. We have 18 car queuing spaces, which is way above 10. Starbucks tries to put between 12 and 14, but we wanted to make sure we know that this is a traffic car oriented neighborhood. So 18, and there's a passerby lane if there's any queuing. So we don't expect any backup. And we also have a traffic engineer who's not here today to ensure that there's no backup onto any of these streets. But you can see we have like huge parking lot with 37 parking spaces, I believe. So don't anticipate any backup. And then the other parts of the finding is that it's oriented the area towards motor vehicle, which is kind of broad, but we are right near a bunch of expressways, you know, people, we expect that people will pick up their coffee on the way and to and from work in this location, so it's the perfect location. And then the other parts of the findings is that you don't negatively impact residences that are adjacent to you. And what's really amazing about this site is we don't have any residences adjacent to us. So we will not be negatively impacting any residential neighbors. But we did think nicely. I brought the architect just in case anyone has any architecture questions, but he did nicely design this site. You can see that there will be landscaping all on Ellie Avenue. 37 parking spaces, 18 queuing. We have a traffic engineer that helped us design our curbs. So we will be going through that process. Unfortunately, we go to you first and then DOT looks at it. But this was his based on reviewing the site and what he thought would be the best for maneuverability. And then I should also just say is even though this focus of this application is for the queuing, the greater zoning lot will have another retail building on it because it's such a large site. That's 3,000 square feet. But that is not, we're not asking for anything from that. And we're not asking for a drive-through. It's just going to be a normal retail space. And there's enough parking to accommodate both sites. So I don't want to waste too much of your time, but that,
Question.
yes.
What's there now?
There used to be a diner, but now there's not.
The old Pelham Bay diner.
That's
we're
right.
next
Oh,
to
the
it.
diner that closed down?
Going
By
to-
the,
by the two-way,
by the
yeah.
hotel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Approved.
And the sad story, I don't know if you guys all want to know, but I'm actually working on a few closed diners.
Okay.
2 or 3
I'm
because
sure.
diners just aren't making money anymore.
Yeah, they're tough to, yeah, especially
So-
right now.
What about the Royal Coach? Is that on your list?
The Royal Coach?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that on the Bronx Park East? On Bronx,
The ones I'm working on have been
Still on
closed.
East Carnival.
I know we.
Yeah, and they're not in this borough. Also, I haven't gotten to see the Bronx too much, so thank you for having me because I was going to Brooklyn and Queens all the time. But now that we're doing drive-throughs, I guess I'll be seeing you.
So just for context, in terms of
Yeah.
this particular diagram.
Yeah.
Where exactly are the remains of the diner?
So the remains of the
Here.
existing building
Yeah.
is basically right above or right where he's indicating, right where the existing eating and drinking.
So like where the B is maybe?
No, where the A and the B.
Right.
Hey.
A and B.
Okay, got it.
And I can.
It's a larger one, it's one larger,
So,
So is this the golf course?
no.
yeah, yes, that have to be.
Over here.
There's a
Yes.
depot, like,
Yeah.
To the left, yeah,
Yeah.
would be the goal.
So this is.
Yeah.
and then this.
So Home Depot is
I can
right.
show you
So-
too.
Oh, that helps.
So-
That-
Yeah, I just wanted this, everyone to
Right.
picture.
Okay, left.
This would be really nice.
Here.
Okay, to Eli.
Yeah, 'cause
Okay,
that's-
okay.
Yeah.
Here,
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
Oh, I see. This is,
Yep.
this helps.
Yeah,
Okay.
that answers the other question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can see it's a driving area, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Yeah. I don't want to waste your time, but that's the whole thing.
Do you need us to vote on something?
I do. I need your support if you're okay with it.
So we don't have quorum. So I think we have to vote on this next week, Thursday.
At
At
the
full
full
board.
board.
Okay.
We'll have quorum
Do
there.
you need us to come back?
No.
Okay. I appreciate that. Because I do live on the 5, but there was a huge problem with it today.
It's too. So what we'll do is we'll talk about this at leadership and we'll vote it out at leadership and then it'll go to
The full
full
board.
board. So it's my new show, but yeah.
I brought him just in case you had those tricky questions.
So we don't have.
Ah,
So, well, you should see something by the end of the month.
Okay, no problem. Oh, and then our hearing, we have an initial hearing, but we go to you first, because the way this works is we get your recommendations first, is June 10th.
Thank you. Wendy, questions?
I don't have any questions. I had reviewed all the documents. I would just ask that these docs, if possible, be added to the full board docs,
Okay.
so that we're transparent.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think it should be a problem because that's been an eyesore for many years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
it is.
Yeah. Okay.
And Wendy, thank you so much for being so communicative. I did go back.
Oh,
and
anytime.
It is
That's
nice.
what we do here in land use and housing. We
Regarding this site, wasn't it supposed to be, wasn't it proposed to be a medical facility at some point?
They weren't with me when that happened, so I have no idea. I just
think they filed it.
It's been closed
Yeah.
down, huh?
don't know.
Yeah,
That'd be cool.
it's an eyesore.
Yeah, it is.
But I
was
would
a long time ago in the Bronx Times,
Oh.
2019.
yeah.
But when did the diner close though? Mike, when did the diner close?
Oh, that was a long time ago.
How many,
Yeah,
I believe before COVID.
before COVID?
Yeah.
yes,
Oh, yeah.
last time.
And I would say that projects too, just like know about being a land use attorney, do you see them over and over and over again? Because
That's-
they try so many
They
different
try different
things.
things, yeah,
And it never worked.
yeah.
Well, we want this to work. so-
Yeah, same. Ah! We're good.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And if you have any other, oh, yeah, I'll take that. But, and also if your office has any other City of Yes things from our perspective, feel free to reach out.
Sure, thank you.
We're from that.
Thank you.
field.
Let me eject the,
Yeah, sure, yeah. Thank you.
So this is a whole.
We take your loss.
Set.
I think you're good.
Say set. You can, this shows.
Thank you.
Diagrams.
Yes.
Different pieces.
Okay, moving on to the gallery session. Rich, you ready for gallery?
Let's do it.
Is that okay if we?
Anyone want to speak? Raise your hand online. Going once. Going twice. Okay. Anyone in here want to go? Any comments, questions, concerns?
I'm just gonna say this,
Go.
for my sanitation committee, we do need to start paying attention to the environmental things around City of Yes, the new potential project of Starbucks. You know, we do need to discuss the impact on that, sanitation pickup, things of that nature. We know that across the street, which MTA owns, they just cleaned that up, thank God. But we need to make sure that that particular area stays clean, right? Even though, quote unquote, it's not our district, this side of the street is. So we just need to, start focusing on that. That's all I'm going to say for that.
Is there a new Starbucks being built?
In this district,
Is it?
yeah.
There is?
That's why I'm at your,
Oh,
here,
Okay,
as
Yeah.
opposed to somewhere else.
gotcha. Okay.
Just to piggyback off of what Wendy said, there are little things that we miss on a daily basis. The other day I went, I was walking around on, over on Pawnee Place, and, I'm minding my own business, and there was speaking of environment, one of those sewer, whatever you call it, sewer grates, was completely just packed with dirt
Yeah.
and muck and
Okay,
whatever.
okay.
I would have kept on walking, but my beau noticed it,
Oh.
and he was like, "You need to take pictures," and I was like, "Oh yeah, good point." So I took some pictures. I submitted a 311. I forwarded it to Jeremy, and then like the next day, I got the notification from sanitation that it had been taken care
Oh,
of.
great.
So I think everyone
Good
just,
job.
I know it can be cumbersome and tedious, but when you see something, a pothole or whatever, take pictures, do a 311. We need to get things documented in order for us to say like, this is what we need, so.
And just to add to that, we have the position of having emails for folks. So if we see something, we report it, we can email sanitation, go, hey, FYI, this is a mess. Can you please look at it? And they will prioritize. I know that's a little bit favoritism, but we're in this position. We should use it for at least good.
Especially because in this particular area, there's a lot of flooding when there's a hard rain. So, we need to, and I don't know, putting a letter together, but we need to really focus on the flood areas. And with all the development coming, right, how does that affect the area, right? Because these sewer systems were built years ago, right?
Mhm.
So they're not able to take on as much water as the environment is giving them now. So we just need to make sure that we stay on top of the agencies, because it can become a flood area.
Anything else?
I think I'm good.
Wendy?
Wendy, anything else?
The only thing, I'm just gonna go down to new business. So Rich and Cynthia, I I spoke to Cynthia from Kevin Riley's office because, I feel like we're going to hit a recession, right? And I feel like the recession of 2008 is coming. And we have a lot of seniors who own homes in this area. And I don't know if they're going to put a lien list in the papers again, but my concern is seniors losing their home based on some form of foreclosure. And the concern I have is that, when you have foreclosure, if you're 4 or 5 months owed, right? If you owe your lender 4 or 5 months and the person has that money in escrow or their savings or whatever, you then have these attorney fees that it seems like they're doubling the price. So you go from owing 4,000 to 10,000 in legal fees. And their attorneys expect that to be paid in one shot. So my conversation with Cynthia today was there needs to be some form of legislation to somehow prevent the amounts that these attorneys are allowed to charge. Now, they're investment houses, right? And they're scattered all over the United States. So the question becomes, will they be under New York State regulation? Of course not, right? But we would have to get creative. But what I told her was that I was going to bring it to the committee tonight and just plant the seed so that we can start discussions on that. And maybe down the line, not too far down the line, but come up with some type of draft to present to our legislators, because a recession is coming and 2008 is coming. If anyone was in Queens during 2008, it was like a ghost town. People lost their homes. And I do not want to see that happening up here, especially when when it seems to be targeting seniors.
Yeah.
The other thing is, the other day I got not a stack of mail, but a couple of pieces of mail with someone who's never lived here before. So I said, okay, wait, we're starting this again because I saw this during the pandemic. So it's those type of things that are starting to come about that we really need to, I don't know if that's a public safety thing. I don't know what committee that falls under. If we need to take the lead on it, let us take the lead. But we do need to, make sure that our political officials are really paying attention to what's going on in our community. Did I freeze?
No, you're not frozen. I support you, Wendy. This is good.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you.
Maybe we're frozen.
Maybe. Let me see.
They're on mute. That's probably why we can't hear them.
They're on mute?
I think so. Do they know they're muted? It says CB11 staff. Oh no. Maybe the staff is the guy who did the presentation. I can't see.
Okay, if you guys can hear me, that's all I had.
Okay, I think we're good.
We're good.
Quick question regarding, I'm going to mute for 1 second,
Yeah.
sorry.
Can you hear us?
I hear you now.
So I think we should maybe talk about in the future, combining all of our committees officially. Just not now, maybe in the future, because I think we need to meet quorum more often than not. And I don't mind us doing this together in the long run. I mean, Cynthia, what do you think?
I've always been in favor of it. I know Wendy has had her reservations.
Okay,
But it's a conversation.
okay, so let's talk about it leadership then again. Because I think we should start combining, because we're attendance. I think I'm good.
You want to talk about?
Combining.
Oh, that's fine.
But let's talk about leadership more.
That's fine.
Okay, all right, I think we're good. Motion to adjourn? Second?
Motion.
Second.
All right, meeting adjourned at 7:11. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night, all.
Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Good night. Good night.